Will Arsenal's season be derailed by injuries? We continue our reaction following a disappointing night at Selhurst Park on this edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.
Hello and welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner, the Arsenal podcast, part of the 90 Min Football Network. As ever, I'm your host, Harry Symeou. Feeling a bit down in the dumps today. I'm not going to lie, not just because of last night's result, but some of the news that's come out of the club with regards to the fitness of certain players has also led me to have greater concern. So we're going to dig into all of that. We're going to continue to react to last night. We're going to be talking about how we can potentially solve those issues that we're going to have going forward, or what we can do to best patch them up. Joining me to do that is the brilliant Mike Stavrou, journalist, broadcaster, and friend, of course. Mike, how are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good. I've got to say, I watched your reaction show last night after, and you look so glum. The only ever time I've seen you look that glum is when we went to a restaurant and the waiter came over and brought our food. I had some massive mixed grill, and Harry had about like 6 or 7 pieces of octopus. So I could see him like trying to, smile and trying to trying to act like it wasn't a big deal. But yeah, mate, I'm feeling. You know what? For other reasons, I had a really bad day yesterday. Just one of them days where everything goes badly, and I was like, oh, surely it can't get worse. And lo and behold, it did get worse. But it's sort of like when something bad happens and you have a bad day, and then the football happens, and then that's also bad. It almost like softens the blow a little bit, because it's like, okay, well, I've had a bad day anyway. Arsenal have lost. Whereas if you've had a really good day, you're buzzing for the game, and then Arsenal go and ruin your day, it's like it's almost a bit worse. You know what I mean?
What you're basically saying is that you were already prepared for disappointment before the game even started last night.
Basically prepared for disappointment and for other reasons. And yeah, Arsenal didn't lift my mood, but it didn't worsen it either because it was on the floor. But yeah, not great.
Yeah, it wasn't great at all. Said on the sort of post-match reaction show that I could tell sort of 5-10 minutes into the game that it was going to be one of those nights. We never started the game. We were second to every ball. We lacked the commitment. We weren't competitive, as Mikel Arteta so rightly put. I think there were just so many issues with this Arsenal side yesterday. Having one of our first choice fullbacks out is something that for a little while now we've kind of gotten away with, but having 2 out was a big problem for us, as you could see.
Yeah.
We're going to break down all these bits of kind of news individually, but we've been told that Kieran Tierney's scan on that knee injury picked up on international duty doesn't look good. And some reports coming out of Scotland, the Scottish Sun are reporting this. I know they're not exactly sort of the beacon of truth, but the Scottish Sun are saying that he could be out for the entire season. We saw another abysmal performance from Nuno Tavares coming into the side cold, and he looked like he hadn't played for ages. Thomas Partey's injury, Mikel Arteta alluded to in his press conference after the game that it's a similar injury to what he's had before, which suggests that it's probably a hamstring muscular problem, which means at minimum 3-4 weeks out on the sidelines. A number of players just didn't turn up and perform on the night. There's just so much to unpack here. I want to start off, though, by getting your sort of overriding thoughts on the game. I mean, aside from the kind of obvious, we weren't at it and Crystal Palace were better than us, of what did you take away from that performance, and how much has it impacted your thoughts on the process and the direction, if at all, in which the team is headed?
I want to say straight away, like Crystal Palace had the energy and they had the spirit, and that early goal lifted the crowd. And once those mistakes that we'd made were hammered into the team, it's like they just collapsed. And you saw sort of similarly a weak mentality that we've had in the past. It was almost like a throwback to those late Wenger days and Emery days, and some of the days under early Mikel Arteta as well, where we just, lose our cool, lose our heads. They can't execute the game plan because mentally they're gone. And I think that's what we saw last night. But even though Crystal Palace were good, I don't think like in the final third they were that incisive. You look at where the goals came from. The first one, shocking defending from Tavares and Gabriel. Just, two men get out jumped by Anderson, and it doesn't even hit. He didn't even head it. It just hits his head. It's not even like he's put across a brilliant header back across the box. He's literally slammed against his head, beaten two defenders, who Gabriel you would say is good in the air typically. So that was and obviously, they score and Mateta is unmarked. So that's the first goal. The second goal, I mean, it's just shambolic. You wouldn't say that's Steven Gerrard playing that pass. It's Joachim Anderson playing a hopeful, Hollywood ball that he probably doesn't even think is going to get anywhere near, putting a
It shouldn't get through either, should it? It shouldn't beat Gabriel.
Of course not. It shouldn't beat Gabriel, and Tavares does not help out Gabriel at all, because as he doesn't react, whereas Ayew reacts when Gabriel misses the ball. Tavares just switches off, and you know what? I say switches off. He didn't switch on the entire game. There was not one moment where I thought this guy is, in tune with the game plan. He sort of knows what he's doing. He just looked lost out there, and what that did, that fed through to Gabriel, and Gabriel was almost like doing two jobs, and he had to overcommit, and that's why you saw him made that rash challenge for the second goal, because he was thinking, "There's no way Nuno's going to get this. I need to jump in." Whereas if it was Kieran Tierney, he'd be like, let Tierney deal with this. He's coming to his side. That's his man coming from the right. Let him deal with it. Let him intercept it. But obviously, Gabriel had no faith in Nuno, and obviously Arteta has very little faith in Nuno Tavares, because he's been taken off at 35 minutes in the FA Cup and then 45 minutes. And I'm pretty sure there's been another game where he's been hooked early as well, maybe at half time. I can't remember exactly what game.
Nottingham Forest. It was Nottingham Forest in the first half, wasn't it? In the FA Cup.
Yeah, that's right. So, that's multiple occasions where he's clearly shown not to trust him. And it's almost like that little spell in the team before where he actually was keeping Tierney out of the team has just completely disappeared. And it sort of seems like he is a young player, but he's someone that is, thinking about these mistakes. Whereas you got the fearless youngsters like Saka and Emil Smith-Rowe, who, if they make a mistake or if things don't go right, they've got the mental fortitude to sort of bounce back. But Tavares, every time he gets on the pitch, just doesn't look right. But I think that's a fair point to make about Palace, because I've just talked about the first two goals and the penalty as well. And that was just an obvious mistake by Odegaard. Again, he was, he panicked, and they had two shots, Harry, and
scored 3 goals.
So, you can't even sit there and say Palace were incredible. They were very good. They were very energetic. They had a game plan. And in the second half, they just shut up shop. And even though we had about 3 million attackers on the pitch, we couldn't get anywhere near Vicente Guaita. So overall, mate, it was just awful. But I wouldn't give Palace, I'll give them credit, but I wouldn't say that they were incredible.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, isn't it? Because always when a top team or a big club or a big team, whatever you want to call us, I don't know that you can call us the top team, but a big team gets beaten, the instant kind of reaction or the go-to reaction for a lot of people is to be critical of the team who've lost the game, to be critical of the big side who've underachieved. I think we've become almost so mindful of that people have maybe gone overboard in their praise of Crystal Palace yesterday, as you said. I think that Crystal Palace I don't think they were very good sort of on the ball, in possession, in terms of breaking us down, in terms of, like, I don't think we made them work for it. But I do think they were much more committed than Arsenal. And if you get those basics right, then of course you create a platform from which you have a greater chance of going on and winning the game. I don't want to be this reactionary, because I pride myself on trying not to be this guy, and I don't want to be Mr. Doom and Gloom after every defeat. I never thought at the outset this season that Arsenal would finish in the top 4. I've sort of come around to the idea that it's possible over the last couple of months. I still think it would be an overachievement if we managed it, based on sort of the process, the fact that we've had to rip everything out, the fact that we've had to leave ourselves a little bit thin. And I've seen a lot of people critical of Mikel Arteta's decision to thin out the squad, in recent times, and we'll come on to that in a little bit. But just on Nuno Tavares, before we move on from the left back, is this the end of Nuno Tavares at Arsenal? Because he was someone that was signed for what, £8-9 million in the summer, somebody who was clearly brought in as an understudy to Kieran Tierney, somebody we hoped could play that role. As you mentioned, he had a really good run of games earlier on in the season. In fact, on some of the preview shows, I was sitting there saying, I think he gives us more going forward than Kieran Tierney, because he is that bit unpredictable. He does sometimes come inside rather than always going on the outside. He's got that power, pace, the fearlessness that you mentioned. But Nuno Tavares in his current state is not fit for purpose. And this is the second time now that he's been hooked off early. Mikel said post-match it was tactical, but I'm not buying that. I think he looked at his performance and thought it was awful and decided that we were better off without him on the pitch. Do you feel like he's sort of slowly showing Mikel Arteta that he's not up to the task?
Well, your mate, friend of the show, I shouldn't say your mate, it sounds horrible. Tom Canton said before the game on Twitter, the Tavares is going to show us all the attacking deficiencies that Tierney, has basically, and he's going to sort of show. And in a way, he was right, because Tavares on his day can do that, but it's going the other way, Harry. He's just woeful defensively, and I think, as I said, I think it very much is a mentality thing. Those past performances where he's got hooked off are haunting him, and that's a hard thing to get past. And I think like the only way you get past that is playing through it. But I don't think he should be allowed to play through it at this stage of the season, this critical stage, because one mistake, and another mistake could derail him, and it could derail us. So I don't think that should be allowed to happen. We'll talk about obviously what could be done on that later, but yeah, I don't think he's done, because I think when you have a secondary competition like the Europa League, the squad is massive. The squad is so important, and he will probably play, whatever European competition we're in next year, whether that's Champions League or Europa League. I feel like he will play some games in that competition. Or if not, if we're in the Champions League and Arteta needs to rotate because, we're playing midweek again, he will need to play a few Premier League games. So, we can't completely rule him out, because then that will be another position that we need to strengthen in the summer. And we've seen that, he can have flashes of good. So we need to work on that rather than just, a few bad games and say get rid of him. But I do understand where the question's coming from, because, it's not just bad, it's shocking yesterday.
Let me ask you this then, Mike, because we've almost in the last few months sort of become obsessed with this idea of getting back into the Champions League next season. A lot of us, you, me, have all sat here and said that if we did it, it would be quite an achievement. And although in the fans' eyes and in a lot of people's kind of standards, getting in the Champions League for Arsenal is a minimum. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you agreed with me that if we did manage it this time around, we'd be slightly ahead of schedule. Do we run the risk of, if we did get in the Champions League, sort of falling really short and it damaging us domestically and sort of in the Champions League, based on the fact that we don't have a deep enough squad? Because we were missing a couple of players yesterday, and it completely changed the dynamic. So do you fear that, although it's great to be ahead of schedule, and although it will allow us the opportunity to go out and spend more money because of the financial reward that it brings, do you feel like there's too much work that needs to be done to make Arsenal or to put Arsenal in a position where they can compete for the top four again next season, but also have a good crack at the Champions League?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. And yeah, I mean, if we don't heavily bolster the squad and we have this similar squad that we do now next year with the Champions League, it could really, really affect our league form, because there's it's all the traveling, it's having the extra game a week. There's so much that goes into that. The increased possibility for injuries with more games. It's just, you're 100% right. It could, but I feel like if we aspire to be a Champions League club, first of all, we need to get in there, and whether we scrape it or whether we get in there regularly, needs to happen first, and then we can start to worry about the other stuff. And I feel like that Champions League money and that allure of playing Champions League football will allow us to go out and do so much that would enable us to increase the quality in the squad, and maybe go and get out some more commercial deals which will bring more revenue, which could be put towards the club or put towards transfers. With the Champions League, it's just endless positives that I'm not sure you can sort of look at it and say, all right, we're not quite ready, because I feel like you almost just have to go in there, do as best as you can, because I think all of us have the mindset, Arsenal fans, even if we don't get out of the group in the Champions League, it will still be a success because we're back in it. We're back in that competition that we've been waiting for so many years. And even if we get battered in all 3 games, it's not going to be nice, and we will get humiliated, but you're back in the competition, and you have that ability to become, to get back in there. And yeah, I don't know. I can't see a justification for going the other way. No.
Oh no, and let me be clear. I'm not saying that I don't want us to finish in the top 4. I absolutely do. I'm desperate for it. I am desperate for it, because I feel like Mikel Arteta overall has done a good job. I think at the end of the game last night, those who were still in Selhurst Park in sort of Arsenal colours were chanting his name. I thought they sent a clear message to the players and to the manager that they're very much behind him, and they're very much sort of behind the direction of travel that we're currently in. And I think that we've got to be, pleased overall. Look, I think on the road, we've taken 15 points from the last 18 available. I mean, that when you think about where we were, how can anybody say that's not progress? Going into the game last night, we were 13 points better off at this stage of the season than we were last season. 13 points is a lot. It's a lot. It makes a big difference. So I think for me, it's undeniable that we're moving in the right direction. I do think that, yes, getting back in the Champions League quicker is obviously really, really important. But I do worry that unless there is huge investment and unless the squad is built out a lot more come the summer, that with Champions League football, it's great, but we're going to struggle to balance the two, because we're only playing essentially a Premier League competition at the moment. And we've seen that 1 or 2 players absent can really impact us. Let's move on to quickly sort of touch on the debate that's going around at the moment with regards to whether or not we should have strengthened in January. I thought at the time that we probably should have. I wanted us to go out and bring in a striker. We didn't do it. I kind of came to the conclusion at the end of the window that for Arsenal not to have done it, they must not have felt that the right deal was on the table. I liked the idea of Alexander Isak. I didn't like the idea of paying £75 million for him and what that might mean for us in the summer. We decided not to do that. It's easy to do this with hindsight, but did Mikel Arteta, and we all recognized and acknowledged it was a risk at the time, is that risk going to be what costs us this season? Or do you still think that even with a couple of additions, we would have found it tough to get over the line?
It's just, this is the most typical thing, Harry, honestly. Like, we lose one game and we get battered, and it's like, oh, did we make a mistake? But a few games ago, when we'd just gone on a 5-match winning streak, it was like, oh, maybe Arteta was right not to splash out on a strike. It's just, with Arsenal fans and with fans in general, it's so fickle, man, honestly. And I'll stick by what I said in January, which is I think we should have, but I could understand that if they felt like they couldn't get the striker in that they were 100% convinced about, then they don't get him, because that makes sense. I feel like this next purchase, this striker purchase, is the difference between us being a good club and a very good club. Like, that will elevate us, because at the moment our striker is not scoring goals, and I think it's understated to that you can't state how big of an issue that is. When your striker has no confidence, has not scored a goal in open play, God knows when. I saw the stat yesterday. I couldn't believe it. It was something ridiculous. That is
17,
so huge.
18 hours, was it? Something like that?
Yeah, something mental like that. And that is a huge thing. But, it's hindsight, isn't it? It's after 5-match winning streak, we're in the key position for top 4. Okay, maybe we didn't really need a striker. We're getting through. Lacazette is amazing. Lacazette is the best team player in the world. Oh, he's so amazing. He's so selfless. And then suddenly he puts in a shocker and it's like, oh, Lacazette, man, like you've not scored in all this time. And he's so rubbish and get rid of him. So, you know, it is very much this flip-floppy nature that fans have. And we can be guilty of as well sometimes. But I think we, at least, speaking for me, you try and stick by what we said. And we did criticize that in January, and we thought it was a mistake. But we could also see the other side of it, where, you know, we have entrusted this manager and this club in its current state to make those decisions because of the summer that they had, and the fact that, just going back as well, I just want to touch on this last point, because someone in the chat said it might be a sackable offence if we don't get Champions League. Just touching on that, I spoke to someone the other day, a few Arsenal fans, and I was saying, do you really think that at the beginning of the season, Arsenal's, the club's objective was to get back into the Champions League? Because I don't think so. And if you say that, I mean, that's up to you. But at the end of the day, I don't know that the club's objective. You don't know. But I'm just saying, based on that situation right there in the summer, with all of those risks that we made, with United buying Jadon Sancho, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Rafael Varane, Spurs, you know, they kept Harry Kane, which was a huge thing for them.
Brought in Antonio Conte.
Yeah, exactly. Later on, they'd get Conte. So I don't think you could say in any way that top four would have been a realistic objective. They might have thought, okay, well, let's get in the race and let's see where we are around January, February time. They might have well said that, but I don't think for any you know way they would have said, which is what some people are saying, that, oh, well, if Arteta doesn't get top four, then he's gone. I mean, that is just ridiculous. There's no point talking about that. That's just ridiculous. But at the state that the club was in at the time, I don't think that was the objective. I don't.
No. Me neither. I think that the objective was to get back into Europe, to finish in the top 6, to display progress on the field and display progress off the field in terms of not financially, because we know that the club pumped in quite a bit of money. The Chronicles sort of signing off on a load of spending into kind of to help strengthen the team and move us forward. The point I'm trying to make is that I think that when you finish 8th in back-to-back seasons, you need to get into Europe like that. And we were lucky to get into Europe because of that FA Cup victory. Previously, we need Arsenal to be back in European competition. And I think that would have been the objective. It's all good sitting there as fans and going, well, I remember Arsenal winning the title in 2004. And so because of that, on that basis, we need to be in the Champions League in 2022. Unfortunately, things don't work like that. The landscape has changed, as I've said repeatedly. You know, you look at the likes of Chelsea, who have spent huge money over the last sort of 20 years. They are now an established side right at the top of the table. Liverpool have been sort of reborn again under Jurgen Klopp. Manchester City, we can't outspend them. Manchester United, you already mentioned. The only reason, I don't want to say the only reason we're in the hunt for the top 4 is because the door's been left open. But as we said on, I think it was the last show we did, a percentage of it is down to that. I think we said it was about 30%, 35%. And that can be the difference between making it and not making it. It's as simple as that. I find it draining that we can go, or the fan base in general can go, or the Twitter fan base, let's be clear, can go from, oh yeah, we're on the right path, we're doing brilliantly, I love being an Arsenal fan again, I feel so much pride watching this side, to, oh my God, it's a disaster, it's all over. I mean, let's be clear, Mike, we are feeling down. Yeah. I don't know about you, and I'll come on to this in a minute, but for me, I feel more down about the implications of some of these injuries as opposed to last night as a result in isolation. I'm more fearful about how we're going to cope with these absences more than I am at the fact that we slipped up at Crystal Palace and now Tottenham are above us on goal difference. We'll talk about the game in hand in a bit as well, because that's something that sort of has all of a sudden vanished from some people's minds because of the state of play last night. But yeah, I completely agree with you that the remit within the club was not that we had to get Champions League at the start of the season. It was that we had to get back in Europe. And the reason Edu never came out and said that the plan or the objective was to get back in Europe, and everybody was critical of him for keeping sort of tight-lipped about that, was because he knew he'd get this reaction. because he knew that if he said we want to get back into Europe, everybody would have gone, oh my God, that's not good enough that he's accepting Arsenal being in the Europa League. The fact that he didn't say anything at all indicates clearer than anything that the Champions League wasn't what Arsenal felt was achievable. If we do it, great. But if we don't, it doesn't mean that all the work we've done over the last sort of 18 months has been bad and it's just disappeared.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the midfield, because we've talked about Nuno Tavares. And as I say, we hear that the Kieran Tierney thing could be quite serious and perhaps his season is over. Big blow. Midfield, Thomas Partey. He's been world class in the last couple of months. I'd go as far as saying that. He's been so good. He's been key to everything positive that we've done. Last night, he was shocking. What do you put that down to? An off night? People around him not being at the level? What do you put it down to? And how do you think his absence now is going to impact us?
Yeah, shocking overall performance from him. He wasn't at the races, full stop. I think he was late into challenges. His touch was off. His passing range was off. You know, when he's usually confident and he's taking one or two touches and spraying the ball out to Saka or to Smith-Rowe, to Martinelli, who on the wings, he just wasn't doing that. And I keep banging on about Harry, but I will say I think it was a massive oversight from Arteta when we were getting battered by Palace. They were absolutely relentlessly chasing us down and we couldn't get a foot on the ball. It was up the pitch. And this is what I was saying about this number 8 thing. And I will keep going on about it until the cows come home. I think it leaves Thomas Partey isolated. And you saw what happened when he was isolated last night. Yes, he had a bad game. And if Xhaka was next to him, he probably would have continued to have a bad game. I'm not saying that. But what I saw last night was when we had the ball at the back, which was the only time when we had the ball in the first half, with Gabriel and White passing it between each other. There was nothing in front of them. What were they meant to do? Gabriel had the ball. His option was to go to Ben White or to go to Nuno Tavares, who was having an absolute shocker and would lose the ball 9 times out of 10 or come back to him. So what were we meant to do in that situation? Partey was marked by Gallagher, man marked, so he couldn't move. And when he did get the ball, he gave it away. And Xhaka was standing in no man's land. He was nowhere to be seen. And when we needed that senior guy to drop in, he could have occupied that system that we played before for a bit, just to get us through to half time at maybe 1-0, or just to see us through when he dropped into a back three and helped Nuno play further forward. And he eventually went to left back later on. But this is what I think that was. I'm criticizing Arteta here for that. I feel like he should have recognized that Palace were battering us. And even before the game, maybe he should have even seen that before the game that Palace were going to do this. He should have known what sort of high intensity football they play with. But yeah, even though I think Partey had a shocking game, he definitely could have been helped more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that, yeah, sort of watching the game back today, because I did this morning, and I always like to do that between sort of the post-match reaction podcast where it is a little bit raw, and then sort of doing the next show where we try and be a little bit more sensible and break things down in a little bit more detail. I did watch the game back, and I think you're right. I think that we struggled to progress the ball. We sort of invited Crystal Palace to press us, and they did, but they were quite smart in the way they pressed, in that they didn't just sort of go 100 miles an hour. It was a strategic press from Crystal Palace that prevented us putting the ball into the midfield and progressing it from the back line. And then what you quite often saw was Gabriel hitting balls out to the left wing, hoping that Tavares or Smith-Rowe was going to pick him up. You saw Ben White, as he quite often does, but being a little bit more direct in the way he was trying to hit Bukayo Saka on the right flank, and it just wasn't working. Crystal Palace backed themselves to deal with those balls and to deal with that threat. So yeah, I think Mikel Arteta can be criticised for maybe not reacting to that in game. The reason I don't want to go too big though on Mikel Arteta is purely because we've developed or found a way of playing over the last few months that's worked for the most part. And I don't think you can ever actually embed a philosophy if you keep flip-flopping every single week. So I think to a degree, to nail a way of playing down to a T, you do have to be a little bit stubborn sometimes. And I look at the team he selected yesterday based on what was available. The only thing that you could maybe question, and I don't think this would have had an impact on a result, was Martinelli instead of Emile Smith-Rowe. Other than that, we'd have all picked the exact same team, given what was available to us. So I think on that basis, it's very hard to kind of hang this all on the manager. Matthew Newbury in the comments says, "You're hilarious. You'll keep dropping your targets until Arteta achieves it, and you'll say we're progressing." Well, Matthew, for you to say that, I'm going to assume that you're not a regular viewer or listener of the podcast, because my target was never finishing in the top 4. I always felt that if we managed that, it would be an overachievement. I've said throughout the course of the season, and the people in the chat box that are here regularly will back me up on this, I've said throughout the course of the season that within the club, I'm almost certain that the aim and ambition would have been a top 6 finish. So yeah, I'm not changing anything. I've also been one of the few people in the sort of Arsenal world who's been saying, well, no, the top 4 thing, it's not as clear cut as people are making it out. I've been on 90 min and been sort of laughed at by my colleagues for when they sort of flip over to me saying, no, it's not done. Stop talking about Arsenal as if they finished in the top 4. I've been laughed at on TalkSport for saying that the top 4 race is not done. So I'm not changing my view at all. My view has been fairly consistent. So I don't know where you've got that from. I haven't dropped my standard in any way, shape, or form. My standard was just somewhere that a lot of you didn't want to accept at that point. Mike, what do you make of? So obviously, there's been a lot of talk about Thomas Partey, obviously converting to Islam recently, and that he may have been fasting yesterday, and that might have had an impact on it. I think I know that that's a difficult time for players. And it's particularly if you're somebody who's not done it before and you're new to it. I can imagine that fasting takes its toll. But when you look at the way everybody else performed, I think people are making too much of that. Would you agree? And for me, the only reason I'm talking about Partey is because of his injury and how I feel that's going to affect us going forward, more than wanting to single him out as the only bad performer.
Yeah, I think as well, he'd had, 2 games on international duty as well, which is never easy. And then just going back to what you said about Martinelli, I think he would have started, but, he played his first 2 games for Brazil and, was jetting all over the world. So he must have been shattered, which is why I think he didn't play, whereas Smith Rowe didn't link up with England, did he? So he get backed out of the squad. So that's probably why he played. But yeah, there was just poor performances all over the pitch, to be honest. I think the only players who could sort of come out with it with a bit of credit was, I think Ben White did okay. I feel like he was the one out of him and Gabriel that was a bit more switched on, even though, this is fine margins, they were all quite poor, but I'm just trying to look at Ramsdale. I thought was all right. And I think actually, even though Cedric struggled against Zaha, I feel like he didn't get absolutely ruined, which he could have done. And I feel like he actually held his own a little bit. There was a few scenarios where, he took Zaha to task, where it would have been easy for him to just fold and, concede a penalty or really kick it in, but he didn't. He kept his cool, which is fair play to him. And I don't think we'd have been crediting Cedric for a long time, but it's just the importance of getting these players back like Tomiyasu. Because I think if we can get back Tomiyasu, what that does is just allow us to almost have a bit of a free hit on the left-hand side and someone who's not particularly great defensively, because we can flip the system and play him as one of the centre backs, essentially, and one of the right backs as well, sort of hybrid role. And what that does, it just shores us up a bit and says to the left back, you go and attack, and we'll cover you essentially, and we'll shift across. So I think that will be huge. I don't really know what's going on with Tomiyasu. I don't know if you saw this in the week, but did Cedric say he was fit or something? I didn't really see what that was all about. I don't know if you saw that.
Say that again, mate.
Apparently, Cedric said that Tomiyasu was fit.
Yeah, so I don't really know what to make of this Tomiyasu situation, Mike. I've been saying for weeks, every week in the press conference we get, he's really close to returning. And, it's possible that he'll be involved. He's training. It's possible that he'll be involved. And we think, great, he's back this weekend. And then we get to the weekend and we hear, he was just short. And then it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
He is training, from what I know. But obviously there is a lot of concern about this problem that he has. And it backs up what I've been saying for a while now, that perhaps this is more serious than we're being told. And perhaps this is being covered up a little bit, because him to be absent for such a long period of time for something that seemed, in the eyes of us at least as fans, as pretty innocuous is obviously of concern and of worry. But I really don't know.
And not even in the squad as well, because
exactly.
I mean, I didn't read these Cedric comments. I just saw someone talking about it, and he said he was fit. Well, in my mind, there's how could he be fit if he's not even on the bench? Like, surely if he was even half fit or 3/4, 75%, he might be on the bench. But to not even be there at all suggests what you're saying, that this injury must be a lot more serious than we know. But yeah, it's weird we're not getting an update on that. And as you say, when you take out those two, fullbacks, you can lose one, and the system gets, a little bit misshapen, but you deal with it. But when you lose two, I mean, the whole thing just goes off kilter. And I think the number one thing about us this season that has made us so solid and so improved defensively has been that we've played a regular back five with Ramsdale in the back four. And then for us to lose, two of that back five is a huge thing.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to take a short pause, and then we're going to start to talk about how we can address some of these problems, because we've identified a few of them off the back of injuries picked up during the game at Crystal Palace and in the lead up to it. But just before we do that, I just want to point you in the direction of the latest competition over at Football Prizes, our partners. Now, if you still love him after last night, there is a Patrick Vieira signed and custom framed Arsenal shirt available. It's up for grabs. It includes 13 instant win prizes as well. So if you enter, you get the opportunity to win some of those things as well, which include a Tony Adams signed and framed Arsenal shirt, some stuff signed by Robert Pires, vouchers, all sorts of different things. Tickets are £3.95, and there are 199 available. That draw will be made, and there'll be one winner of the Patrick Vieira signed and custom framed Arsenal shirt. What I would say is, if you're interested in this, despite there being 2 days, 6 hours and 21 minutes left at the time of recording, the auction ends on the 7th of April, which is this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. 131 of the 199 tickets available have already been sold. So if you're interested in this, the link is in the description. Head over there, check it out, get involved, and wishing you the best of luck. Big thank you to our friends over at Football Prizes. Okay, we're going to take a short pause, and then we're going to try and make sense of how we need to move forward. Okay, Michael, I'm going to call you Michael because this is serious business. How are Arsenal going to cope with the absence of, first of all, Kieran Tierney? Now, I've heard a lot of people talking about changing the formation, going to a back three. I've seen some people suggesting that Nuno Tavares should just be stuck with and named in the team. I've seen others talk about Cedric playing there if Tomiyasu is back. I've heard all sorts of stuff. I've heard Bukayo Saka at left wing back. What's your take on the best way to proceed now without Kieran Tierney?
It's tough, isn't it? It's really, really tough, because he's been really important for us, and he's changed his role as well. And do you remember when he first started playing a bit, he wasn't bombing on as much. We both said, he looks like he's struggling a little bit. It's a few months ago, but he's really sort of taken on that role, and he's such a leader as well on the pitch, and it's a huge loss. And the issue is our backups are just not good enough, and that's the one thing you were alluding to earlier, is if we do get into the Champions League, how many players do we actually need? Because on the looks of it right now, a lot. But I think my number one choice would be to put Cedric at left back and hope that Tomiyasu is back. And then, I mean, that will be it's not ideal, but that would be the most ideal situation out of the lot, because Cedric has played left back before. I think he's played okay there. He's not going to set the world alight, but I think when you've got Gabriel Martinelli on the left, he's so good that it's almost like he doesn't need the overlap. And we've been seeing that with Tierney as well, that he doesn't need to bomb on, because Gabriel Martinelli is creating chances for himself, and he's creating opportunities out of nothing because he's just that good. So Cedric's role in an attacking sense wouldn't need to be, as marauding as it has been the left back role in the past. And defensively, even though I'm not, completely sure about him, I would say that over recent months, filling in for Tomiyasu. He's done a pretty good job defensively. I don't think he's been amazing, but I think he's definitely been better than what a lot of us would have thought. And then, as I say, what that allows with Tomiyasu coming back is just that solidity. So whereas the system looked a bit, out of sorts yesterday, with Tomiyasu coming back, it would really solidify us. And again, on even if on the other wing, like I think Saka can do that as well. Saka can create chances. It doesn't necessarily need the overlap all the time. And Tomiyasu does have the capability to do that. It's not his strong suit, but I feel like he could do that. I think option number 2, which I'm not a big fan of, would be to stick Cedric at left back again, put White in at right back, and then Holding at centre back. And for me, that straight away throws up an issue, because why would you want to get rid of that centre back partnership that's doing so well? But then I think to myself, yes, Holding has been good whenever he's come on. I think he's a top professional. I think he could do a job. It's obviously not going to be pretty, but I think White can play right back as well. I think he's good on the ball. He can go forward a little bit. He's not going to venture, past Saka, but I think he can do a competent job. But at the end of the day, Harry, we're light on options. But I think the number one thing I would say is I would be worried about having Nuno Tavares against any opposition like 10th or above, I would say.
Yeah, it's a really hard one, isn't it? I think, and I'm almost maybe scarred from last season when it comes to Mikel Arteta and the way he sort of tackles these kind of issues. I thought, if you think back to that Villarreal semi-final, and this one always sticks with me, so apologies if you've heard this story before or you've heard me kind of refer to this before, but I do think it has relevance here. I think in the past, we've tried so desperately to plug a gap and fill a hole that we've, in the process, weakened ourselves in multiple areas. And actually, that then has a bigger negative effect. Like, remember last year in the Europa semi-final, we took Granit Xhaka out of centre mid and plonked him in at left back. A, he's not a left back, and B, it took a lot away from our midfield at the time. If in an ideal world, right, had Thomas Partey not picked up this injury last night, I would have actually said to Granit Xhaka, go and play a kind of hybrid sort of left centre-back role, leave Gabriel in the middle, shift White over to the right, and be like a back 3 when in possession. That's what I would have done. I would have said to him, go and play in that position, and I would have brought Lacazette into the midfield and asked him to play that slightly more advanced role.
This is when Partey went off, you were saying?
Yeah. So when Partey was on the pitch, the idea of Xhaka dropping into a defensive position, it's not quite a left back. It's a bit more like a hybrid between a left back and a left centre back. I thought actually that isn't too bad, because at that period in the game, I expected us to control possession and I expected us to want to commit extra bodies forward. And if that meant that you could get the player playing on the left to bomb forward that little bit more, or meant that Martinelli and Smith Rowe could both be on the pitch at the same time, then I thought, great. And you look at the fixture that we've got coming up at the weekend, Brighton at home, and I would say that's a fixture where I expect us to control the game. Now, Brighton are a good side with the ball. I don't think it's going to be sort of 70-30 in Arsenal's favour in terms of possession, but I do expect Brighton to be dominated. Now, though, with Partey out, I think we've got a massive bloody problem. We've got a massive problem because, and again, it's not just one of those injuries, it's the combination of the two, because now we require Granit Xhaka to be the sort of the base of our midfield. I think that he has to play the Partey role. Maybe he's not suited to it. People will have that point of view, and I don't think he's naturally suited to it. I don't think he brings the same things to the table as Partey does, but he's going to have to be the base of the midfield, and then you're probably going to have to bring Lokonga in. I don't know that with a weak left back, with a right back who isn't our first choice right back, assuming Tomiyasu still isn't available, or if he is, he's going to be not fully fit. I don't think with 2 weak fullbacks, you can afford to go, I'm going to put Xhaka at the base of our midfield, and then I'm going to put Smith Rowe and Odegaard alongside him. I don't think you can do that.
No.
I think it's too risky. And so Lokonga has to play for me. to help with that balance. And then I look at the left back situation. I agree with you. If Tomiyasu's available, Tavares has been so bad that I'd rather have a right-footed Cedric playing there. But I really don't.
And if Tomiyasu's not available,
if Tomiyasu's not available, I don't know that I would break up the centre-back partnership. And I think I'd maybe, I know this is going to be unpopular, I might stick with Tavares in that instance.
Yeah.
But just risky. Make sure. Yeah, it is risky. But as you said, how's he ever going to come through it if he doesn't play?
Yeah.
But maybe just make sure that you've balanced that midfield a little bit better. Maybe go back to a double defensive midfield pivot where it's Lokonga and Xhaka, so that one of them can get out there and help, as opposed to it being a one-man sort of base and then the two more progressive midfielders. I think it's one where we have to kind of revert back to basics, and that takes away a lot from us in terms of the way we get forward, I think. But I can't really see any other solution. I think we're going to have to accommodate the weakness at left back by getting the midfield balance right. That's what I'm trying to say in the sort of short form. Lacazette played last night again, Mike, and we talked about him earlier as not having a good game, an awful game, in fact. There's been question marks about Lacazette for a while now. What do you do? Do you try and change it there? Do you try and do something different? I've been sort of very adamant in recent months that we just don't have another option. I hear people talking about Pepe playing there. I hear people talking about Martinelli through the middle. Have we reached that point now where desperate times call for desperate measures and you've got to make that change?
No. I still think, even though he was poor last night, I think, as I said earlier, I think it's harsh to single him out. I really do. I think you can't sing the guy's praises for all these assists and all this team play and you know, his commitment, even though his contract's up. I don't think you can praise him for that. And then suddenly when he has a bad game or his weaknesses, which we all knew already, were exposed, as in his lack of, you know, getting in the box and scoring, I don't think you can suddenly turn around and say, oh, like, why aren't you doing that? We knew that. We knew his limitations, and we know the role that he's been given to play in this team. And even though he was poor yesterday, I still think the few chances we did create, he was at the center of it. Those little 1-2s with Martinelli, he was the one that was, you know, had his back to goal and was laying it off. So if we put someone up there, personally Martinelli up there, I don't think he's ready for that. I think he's way more effective on the left because he has more space. He can run at players, and he doesn't have that nous to play up front yet. He just doesn't. So that's a no-go. Eddie Nketiah is not going to play there. Pepe, who's not played all season, is not going to play there. So we don't have any other options. So we need to stick with Lacazette, stick with what we know, stick to what, even though it was bare the other night, stick to what, you know, few opportunities we did have, which came through Lacazette, in my opinion, and just try and get through it. Because I don't think you can say, oh, Lacazette's been really great over the last, not you, but I don't think people can say Lacazette's been really great over the last few games, even though he's not been scoring, because he's added to our play overall. And then suddenly when he has a bad game, go, all right, get rid of him now. You know, I don't think it's really fair.
No, I agree.
It's not really fair, is it?
No, it's not, because we, as you say, we all knew what his shortcomings were. We know that the managers decided to stick with him. We know that was the decision taken. We know that Aubameyang had to leave. I'm getting so frustrated from hearing people going, oh, look, Aubameyang's gone to Barcelona and he's doing X, Y, Z. The guy didn't want to be here. You know, he wanted out. We wanted him out. He's gone. It's done. Forget about it. I think that, I just think that when we have functioned this season, Lacazette's been key in that. I think he does get the best out of the players around him, the Sakas, the Smith Rowes, the Odegaards. I know they all had disappointing games last night, but as we said, it is a one-off fixture. I think that you do damage to them though as well if you take him out and you put someone who, I'm not necessarily saying isn't a better player than Lacazette, but someone who isn't as conscious of link-up play, who isn't as aware of his surroundings as Lacazette can be at times. It's a really tough one. It's a really tough one. I think, look, one of the positives that we've seen from Arsenal this season, and we've got to be honest, is that over the course of the season, when we have suffered setbacks, we've been able to bounce back relatively quickly in comparison to previous years. I mean, if you think back to last season, we had a good 2-month period, didn't we? That was absolutely shocking. We've not had one of those sort of collapses this season. We've been able to bounce back. There isn't very many better fixtures to bounce back in than a game at home to Brighton at the weekend, which you'd hope that is one that we can pick up 3 points from. And then maybe the outlook will look very different. Maybe Thomas Partey is only out for a couple of weeks. Maybe, Nuno Tavares comes back in the side and does well. Maybe Tomiyasu's back and Cedric can fill in at left back. So I guess the overall message here is it's worrying because of the situation that the squad finds itself in. Yeah. But that one defeat in isolation has not completely killed us. We talked about the game in hand just briefly earlier. We don't need to win that game in hand to have an advantage over Spurs. 1 point from that game in hand puts us at an advantage because we'll be on the same games and a point ahead of them. So it's not a game that you need to obsess over and say, oh my God, we need to go to Stamford Bridge and win. Spurs' form over the season suggests that they're not going to win every single game between now and the end of the season. Neither are we, mind you. But there is still such a long way to go that the meltdown is premature, isn't it?
It's a meltdown and different things every game, Harry. I mean, after the game, because let's just state facts. On the weekend, Chelsea lost 4-1 to Brentford at home.
Exactly.
This is the Chelsea that are going to batter us in our game in hand. So, let's be realistic here and say that we've got a chance of definitely getting a draw, maybe even nicking a win in that game. So that puts us ahead of Spurs. And look, Spurs played a Newcastle side who didn't really know how to break them down or how to compete against them at the weekend. They just looked quite lost in that game. And then they've got the sort of weapons in Kane and Son that can hurt you. But that's not to say that Spurs are going to win every game. They're not. And just like we're not going to win every game, there's so many twists and turns to come, and to sort of it's this sort of reaction from Arsenal fans now. It's like it's over. It's not over. We've lost one game 3-0 after being on a run of like 6-7 wins and 1 loss. I don't know what it is exactly, but it was 5 wins before Liverpool, and then we've won since then as well. So let's not go over the top. It was a bad result. It was a bad night. There are some implications in terms of injuries, but as you say, after the 3 games that we lost early in the season, first 3 games of the season, we bounced back. After Liverpool, we bounced back. Going back to last season, we were down in 14th. We bounced back. So I back this team to bounce back again because we have done so in the recent past. And for me, Harry, what I want to see on the weekend is see that fight and desire back. I want to see Mikel, put a rocket up their asses basically and just say, look, that. And he said, you know what? We criticized Mikel for his interviews and him not really giving much away, but he laid into them, didn't he? He said this was unacceptable. He said this is the basics, and he's doing that weird boat analogy again that he did last time that seemed to work. So
whoever doesn't want to be on the ship can jump overboard.
I mean, it's unconventional, but I get what he's saying.
It's probably like a saying in Spanish that sounds a lot better. Like I do this sometimes. Like sometimes I'll hear like Greek family members like coming out with a phrase that when you try and translate it to English, it's like, what are you talking about? But in our language, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, hopefully it's that, and it's not just a really bad analogy. But yeah, I understand what you're saying essentially. And look, as long as we've got that desire back and we've got that mentality to compete, because at the end of the day, like as we were talking about earlier, Palace were not brilliant on the ball. They weren't. They didn't break us down. They didn't play around us and little triangles and sort of, beat us one-on-ones and everything like that. We shot ourselves in the foot massively and we couldn't cope with the pressure. So as long as we can, match that intensity in future games, we'll always give ourselves a chance.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Get some questions in the chat box. We're going to just take a couple of questions before we wrap up. We would love to hear from you guys. So get involved in the comments. Also, if you haven't done so already, please do hit the like button. Join the 45 people who've already hit the like button. There's way over a couple of hundred of you watching us now across the multiple platforms. So Why not get those likes up? Please do hit the like button, as I say, if you haven't done so already, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Just before we take a couple of your questions, I just want to give a big shout out to Paul Hill on Instagram, who has sent me these wonderful prints. There you go. So I've got one of Emile Smith-Rowe. This is fantastic.
Wow.
And then I've got one as well of the King, Thierry Henry. These are done by Paul. So if you're interested in getting your hands on some of these, you can grab them from Paul. You can DM him on Instagram. His Instagram tag is at Paul_Hill_creative. So head over there, check him out. And thank you, Paul, for sending me these. Really, really appreciate it. I'll find a place for them on the Man Cave wall very, very shortly. Okay, let's take some of your questions. Okay. Palash says, do you think Tierney's recurring injury issues mean we need a top-class left-back this summer? I've said this 1,000,001 times. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but we can't build a team around people that you can't rely on being fit. Some injuries, they come about not through the player's own fault. And I'm not saying that this is Kieran Tierney's fault, but some players are more vulnerable to injuries. And Kieran Tierney is clearly one of those. Do we need to start to consider that when sort of basing things around him? I.e., people are talking about him being the next captain. Can he be the next captain if he's rarely available?
I think that's a really good point, to be fair. And it's one that I've not really thought about. And yeah, I mean, he is injury prone. Like, that is just clear as day. The amount of injuries he's had since he arrived with an injury, didn't he? He didn't play for a bit when he first came. So yeah, that didn't really start off in the best way. But yeah, I mean, that's probably right. But what's the harm in having two, top class left backs? Because I don't want to get rid of Tierney. I think he's a fantastic player, and why can't he do like what he does for Scotland, where he plays at left back and then sometimes he plays at centre back as well. And I think he's quite a versatile player. So I'd love to keep him, but yeah, that could sure be an upgrade we make. But obviously the issue we know, Harry, is we've got so many other areas that are pressing, and whether that is high on the agenda this season or this summer, I should say, I don't think so, because I think striker, centre mid, and right back maybe will be areas that we need to focus on. So whether that gets done this summer or next summer, I'm not sure, but it's one to look at for sure.
Christoph says, to add to that Katie was out 3 out of 10 matches last year owing to injury. 70% availability is not a viable long-term option.
Yeah,
it's a good point. And that's why you need a deputy at left back more than many other positions that is capable of coming in from the cold sometimes and doing that job. I mean, I've seen a lot of criticism, just to kind of build on this, Mike, for Mikel Arteta, but people saying, well, he doesn't use these players, so how can he expect them to come in? But surely we've had more benefit from having a settled team than we have negative from leaving some players out in the cold. The very nature of being a squad player is that you need to be able to come in, and yeah, you might not be at 100% when you first come back in, but you need to be able to get up to that level pretty damn quickly. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I agree with you. Do you ever go to the barber and your barber's not there sometimes, or do you always make sure? Because it's like going to the barbers and like that second guy is never quite as good, but you expect him to still give you a good haircut. You don't expect to walk out of there with patches and a rubbish fade. Do you know what I mean? You still expect the guy coming in to do a good job, and that's the reason he's there. The reason that Nuno Tavares is there is that when Tierney is not available, he plays, and he plays to a high standard. So if he's not, then something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, I'm very precious about my barber, I've got to say. I always ring him first, make sure he's there. Otherwise, I'm not going. Graham joins us in the chat. Hope you're well. Graham, hope you're good. He says that how much money will we need to spend to build this squad, and where is it coming from? Yeah, look, it is, we do look at the financials of Arsenal Football Club, the ones that were most recently published, and you do wonder where the money's going to come from. I'm convinced, though, I don't know about you, Mike, that if the right players are identified, if Arsenal if it's fed up the line that the right players are available, that KSE will put their hands in their pockets. I think they did that
Mm.
during a difficult time already during the pandemic. Maybe that limits what they will do this time around. But I don't think, for all the criticism we've had of them over the years, I don't think there's reason to believe that they won't try and take this rebuild to the next phase come the summer again.
Yeah, firstly, shout out Graham, Chronicles of a Gooner OG. He comments on
Yep.
every single tweet me and you put out, Harry.
Legend,
proper,
absolute legend.
Absolute legend, mate, and very, very nice to interact with, unlike a lot of people on Twitter. So, yeah, cheers for the question. KSE believe in the project, don't they? They do. Arteta flew out to meet Stan a few months ago, and would he be doing that if they weren't really convinced? I don't think so. So yeah. I mean, to be fair, a lot of people did speculate, that means we're getting a striker in January. Didn't quite work out like that.
Some said it was a new contract. Some said it was a striker.
Yeah. Well, who knows?
Some said Arteta was giving him fashion tips. I don't know. You hear all sorts of stories.
Yeah, whatever it is, but yeah, they believe in him, and I think if they see that we've made progress, regardless of whether it's Champions League or Europa League, they'll be willing to back him even further. Because yeah, as you say, during COVID, we signed Thomas Partey, and everyone was like, "Whoa, that is a huge show of faith!" Like in this uncertain times, go and spend that much money, and then the next season we spend 160 million on new players. So I don't think there's any way you can question if they're going to give it to him. How much money will we need to spend? It's hard, isn't it? It's really hard. It also depends on outgoings as well. How much money are we realistically going to make from outgoings? Because you look at a lot of the players that could be leaving, that are out of contract. We're probably, if they go this summer, we're not going to make any money for them. So that's immediately players that you can remove. What's the word? Remuneration. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I don't know, mate. I don't know.
Just go and edit it, Harry, and add Google Translate saying that word for me.
It's live. Sorry.
On the podcast version. Anyway, yeah, money back. We're not getting any money back for them, and it's whether the players that we're going to sell or that we could sell will actually get money for us. So like Maitland-Niles, he probably looks like he's going to go. Mohamed El Neni might go. Nicolas Pepe, will we choose to get rid of him? And then obviously that adds a huge amount to the transfer kitty, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, we will indeed. I will just take this final question from Essential Departure. Remuneration.
Yeah,
is it remuneration?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I just can't get my words up.
Not remuneration. It's remuneration. I honestly don't know.
I'm pretty sure that is it.
I'll trust Graham on that. Yeah, you wouldn't think I was an ex-banker, would you? Let's take this one just finally from Essential Departure. Do you see Lokonga coming in and doing a job for us? What are your thoughts on Lokonga? Do you trust in him to be able to come into the team now and fill the void left by Thomas Partey? Big boots to fill. I
really like Lokonga. I've always maintained since the first few days I saw him the first few games he played for us. I always thought, this guy's got a future. It's whether he can step up now. I think he was really sold short, Harry, in January when he had to stand in and, play alongside Maitland-Niles. I thought that was really, really tough for him because the last thing you want for a young player is to have another young, inexperienced player beside you. So playing alongside Granit Xhaka, which we think will probably happen, he will be a lot more comfortable. Whether that's the greatest partnership, I don't know. I think maybe he's more suited to being a partner with Thomas Partey, but I think we'll do a job. I don't think he's going to set the world alight, but I do trust in him. I think he's a competent player.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a little bit more of him. I think that one of the things he struggled with in his early days was just maybe holding on to the ball a touch too long. There's a couple of occasions where he got caught in possession or he'd sort of played a sloppy pass. He just needs to be a little bit more. I think when you're playing as the last man in the midfield, you need to just be a little bit more safe with the ball. And I think that was clipping Lokonga's wings a little bit, because if you watched all the clips of him and sort of did your scouting before he came to the club, one of the things that was so impressive was the way he was sort of free at his previous club to carry the ball forward and get into those positions, and was able to take risks in the way he passed the ball. And then all of a sudden he came into a team where he was being asked to be a little bit more structured. And that doesn't just mean you need to be structured in your positioning. It means you need to be structured in the way you distribute the ball as well and the way you use it. And I don't think he was careful enough at the start. But yeah, I think he's got bags and bags of potential. Now's his time to shine. And unlike Nuno Tavares, he's got to come in and take that chance. And if not force his way into the team right away, at least make Mikel Arteta think twice about going and bringing someone in the summer to slot in ahead of him. And that's all he can do at the moment. So fingers crossed that he delivers. Okay, we're going to leave it there because we've been going over an hour. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit that like button if you haven't done so already. We're way off the target on likes. So please do smash it now. Subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new, Mike, let people know how they can follow you and keep up to date with your excellent work.
Yeah, it's
there.
Right down there. At my I went the long way around.
I thought you were going to dislocate your wrist there. Can you even do that? Weird.
At my _Stavrou on Twitter is the best place. Lots of moaning about Arsenal, but I try and keep it, semi-positive, just to not be like a lot of Arsenal accounts out there that love to shit on us. So
for your own sanity, it's important. Yeah, please do check it out. Also, just a quick plug for a show that I was on yesterday over on the Bet Rivers podcast network. I was with Andy Brassel, European football expert, and Nigel Seeley, gambling expert, looking ahead to the Champions League quarterfinals. So if you're interested in having a little bit of a punt, but if you're interested in just some great insight from Andy Brassel as well, then please do check it out. You'll find it on my Twitter feed. It was a good bit of fun. We also did a Europa League one, which is out as well for the games coming up later on in the week. And we did an early look at the World Cup in Qatar after the draw was made. So there's lots of content there. As I said, Andy Brassel's a joy to listen to, man. You just want to sit there and listen to him talk about football. It's worth going over for that alone. We'll be back very, very soon with more content. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Try not to be too down. Hopefully we can bounce back at the weekend. I'll speak to you plenty of times before then. Anyway, until next time, take care.
I'm Martin Tyler, and you're listening to Harry Symeou.